From Nicki Minaj's rumored late-night link-ups with Nas, to whispers of a brief, alleged connection with Elon Musk, and Bow Wow supposedly kicking it with a pre-fame Kim Kardashian. Hollywood has always been packed with celebrity flings that stayed buried until the internet pulled them back into the light. But one story still stands out as the most shocking of them all. Let's break it down. Tupac Shakur and Madonna, two names from completely different worlds colliding at the worst possible time, or maybe the perfect one. Pac, the outspoken revolutionary. Madonna, pop's most fearless rule breaker. On paper, it makes no sense. In reality, something sparked. Rumors say it all began at the 1993 Soul Train Awards, allegedly introduced through Rosie Perez. From that moment, things reportedly escalated fast, but quietly. No cameras catching them. No red carpet appearances. No public confirmation. Just silence, stretching over what some claim was around 2 years of an extremely private connection. While the world stayed unaware, the story only surfaced later when Madonna herself hinted in interviews that Tupac had awakened something in her, something intense, rebellious, and emotionally charged during the height of the mid-90s chaos. Not just romance, but a collision of energy that left a mark on both of them. Still, most of what surrounds this story lives in rumor, memory, and fragmented interviews, not a confirmed public narrative. But that's exactly why it continues to haunt the internet, a love story that may have existed loudly behind closed doors, while the world never saw a thing. From Nicki Minaj's rumored late-night connections with Nas, to whispers about Elon Musk briefly entering her orbit, and Bow Wow allegedly linking up with a pre-fame Kim Kardashian. Hollywood's rumor mill has always thrived on forbidden names and half-told stories. But one narrative still hits differently than the rest, the one the internet refuses to let die. Tupac Shakur and Madonna. Two forces from opposite universes. One a revolutionary voice carved from struggle, the other a global pop disruptor who rewrote the rules of fame. On the surface, it shouldn't have worked. But behind closed doors, something reportedly sparked. The story often circles back to the early 90s, specifically the 1993 Soul Train Awards, where sources claim an introduction happened through Rosie Perez. After that, the connection supposedly moved out of sight. No red carpets. No flashing cameras. Just silence where Hollywood usually screams. For nearly 2 years, rumors suggest a private bond existed while the world saw nothing at all. And later, Madonna herself hinted in interviews that Tupac challenged her emotionally, pulling out a side of her that didn't belong to pop culture rules or public expectations. But the mood shifts when the story takes a darker turn. While Tupac was incarcerated in early 1995, a handwritten letter reportedly surfaced, pages filled with emotion, reflection, and conflict. In it, he allegedly expressed inner turmoil about identity, image, and the pressure of being seen as a symbol for a community that made him a star. That same letter is said to reference deep personal vulnerability, even fear of how choices might be perceived by the people who supported him. The letter later entered public discussion years down the line, sparking legal disputes over ownership and authenticity, with Madonna reportedly involved in attempting to control its release. Whether seen as personal confession or historical artifact, it only added more mystery to an already mythologized story. Then comes the ending everyone knows but still struggles to process: Tupac's death in 1996, sealing the story in silence and freezing every rumor in place. And yet, the pattern doesn't stop there. Years later, another young star would face a similar storm of secrecy and perception. Bow Wow and Kim Kardashian. Before Kim became a global empire of influence, she was still part of a tightly connected celebrity circle, moving through early Hollywood spaces long before the world knew her name. Bow Wow later suggested that he and Kim had a quiet, private connection around the mid-2000s, nothing public, nothing confirmed, just something kept completely off camera. According to his own reflections, the secrecy wasn't just about privacy, it was about image. He reportedly feared how fans would react, especially around expectations in hip-hop culture and public perception of relationships outside his world. So everything stayed hidden, sealed away from headlines. He even later admitted that he had the ability to move unnoticed through fame, describing how easily certain moments could disappear if no one ever spoke on them. Looking back, he framed it as something respectful and distant, just a chapter from a younger time, before fame fully shaped everyone involved. But that same theme of hidden relationships resurfaced again, this time with even higher stakes. Drake and SZA. A connection said to date back to the late 2000s, long before either of them reached peak superstardom. For years, nothing was said publicly. No confirmation. No leaks. Just silence. Then, years later, Drake referenced a past connection in his lyrics, and the internet did what it always does: reconstructed timelines, debated ages, and turned memory into controversy. SZA later addressed it with calm clarity, downplaying the drama and framing it as a moment from youth, something innocent, distant, and long before fame hardened everything into public property. No bitterness, no conflict, just perspective from time past. And that contrast between memory and interpretation became the real story. From there, the pattern shifts again, this time into a moment where secrecy didn't protect anything at all. Travis Scott and Rihanna. Around 2015, whispers emerged of brief encounters during the height of overlapping fame cycles, moments at events like Fashion Week that reportedly never turned into anything long-term. Short, intense, and quickly gone before the media could fully lock in. But what made this story stick wasn't just the rumored connection, it was the power imbalance of perception. Years later, reports surfaced suggesting Rihanna may have preferred to keep parts of that chapter private, not out of shame, but control over narrative in a world that constantly reshapes celebrity moments into headlines. Travis, on the other hand, reportedly valued the secrecy just as much, and the story faded quietly as both moved forward into entirely different eras of fame. Yet, even that wasn't the most talked about rumor thread in hip-hop history. Because before all of this, there was a story that still sits like a ghost in the culture. Jay-Z and Aaliyah. A connection spoken about only in fragments, industry whispers, interviews, and secondhand recollections from people close to the era. Some describe admiration. Others hint at something more complicated, shaped by proximity, ambition, and the blurred lines of fame in the late 90s rock a fellow world. Dame Dash has publicly pushed back on simplified versions of the story, describing a broader circle of attention around Aaliyah as her star rose. But much of it remains unverified, locked in memory and interpretation rather than fact. What is certain is the tragedy that ended it all, Aaliyah's death in 2001, cutting every narrative thread before it could ever resolve. And that's what ties all of these stories together. Not confirmation, not scandal, but silence. Moments between people that the world never fully saw, later rebuilt through rumors, lyrics, interviews, and time. From hidden love stories to public misinterpretations, Hollywood keeps repeating the same pattern. What happens privately never stays private forever. It just changes shape when it finally escapes. Vanilla Ice reportedly made the first move to walk away, and according to later claims, Madonna didn't take it lightly. The story goes that she reached out more than once afterward, still caught in the emotional pull of what they had behind closed doors. But he didn't turn back. He kept the line closed. Years later, he reflected on it with a softer edge, suggesting that Madonna wasn't just a headline or a pop myth in his life. She was, in private, something real, something grounding. And that's exactly what makes the story feel heavier in hindsight. Not scandal, but timing. Not chaos, but exposure. Because once the public gets involved, intimacy stops being protected. It becomes content. And whatever once felt personal slowly gets rewritten by outside noise until even genuine connection starts to feel like a rumor. That tension between private truth and public distortion sets the stage for a very different kind of story, one that doesn't carry heartbreak or betrayal, but something lighter, almost awkward in its honesty. Nas and Nicki Minaj. Unlike the explosive narratives that usually dominate hip-hop gossip cycles, this one sits in a quieter space. Familiar energy, mutual respect, and history that never fully disappeared. Their chemistry had already been visible years earlier during collaborations and on-set moments, where creative tension often blurred into something more personal. By the mid-2010s, speculation began circulating that their connection briefly moved beyond music. Nothing dramatic. Nothing confirmed. Just subtle signs that fans interpreted as more than coincidence, shared appearances, supportive interactions, and moments that felt unusually comfortable for two people with that level of fame. Then came Nicki's public appearances where she casually addressed parts of her personal life with humor and hesitation, teasing the idea of relationships and boundaries in a way that only added fuel to curiosity. A few offhand comments were enough for the internet to build entire narratives around what might have happened behind the scenes. But what made the story spread wasn't shock, it was tone. There was no scandal attached to it, no betrayal, no collapse. Just two major artists moving through fame, sometimes close enough for people to wonder, but never close enough for anything to fully erupt. And in a world where celebrity stories usually end in chaos, that quiet uncertainty almost felt unusual on its own. That single blushing yep did exactly what everyone expected. It detonated across the internet in seconds. Not even a hint of ambiguity left behind, just instant confirmation energy. Ebony and the rest of the outlets didn't hesitate either. They grabbed it and ran like it was breaking news written in fire. For a brief moment, it looked like a new power couple was forming right in front of everyone, balancing on that thin edge between rumor and reality. But then the narrative shifts away from fantasy and lands back into something much more grounded. By late 2017 into early 2018, the whole thing quietly unraveled. No betrayal, no dramatic fallout, no headline-worthy scandal, just distance doing what distance always does. One in LA, the other in Miami, both buried under schedules that refuse to bend. Two careers moving at full speed, two cities pulling in opposite directions until the connection slowly lost its grip. No explosions, no resentment, just the quiet truth of timing not aligning. And somehow that makes it hit even harder, because it wasn't destroyed, it just faded under pressure it couldn't survive. Right person energy, wrong chapter in life. Simple as that. Sometimes the spark is real, but life refuses to sync the clocks. Now that was just one closed-door situation. But the next name doesn't operate in chapters like that, he operates in locked vaults. A man whose entire reputation is built like a sealed archive of moments the public only gets fragments of. A living contradiction, emotionally open in music, but personally encrypted in real life. Drake sits right at the center of that contradiction. Not just a celebrity, but a pattern, a system, almost a strategy disguised as a love life. Over the years, whispers have surfaced, timelines have been pieced together, and connections have been hinted at but rarely confirmed outright. There are relationships that surface years later, like they were frozen in time and only thawed when the internet finally catches up. One example that kept circulating involved a quiet, months-long connection in 2021 with model and media personality Johanna Leah, which only came into public awareness much later through media outlets once the story could no longer stay contained. And that's not even treated like an exception anymore, it feels like part of a pattern. A long list of low-visibility connections that exist more in fragments, lyrics, and speculation than in anything officially acknowledged. What makes it so studied isn't just the secrecy, it's the contrast. This is someone who builds entire careers out of emotional transparency, turning heartbreak into global anthems and personal memories into shared experiences. Yet when it comes to his actual relationships, everything becomes controlled, measured, almost deliberately withheld. Maximum exposure in art, minimum exposure in reality. It creates this strange duality where the world knows how he feels, but almost never knows who it's about in real time. And when details do surface, they often arrive years later, reshaping old songs into new meanings after the fact. The relationships don't disappear, they just exist in delayed reflection, like echoes instead of events. And of course, that level of control doesn't exist without controversy. People question patterns, timelines, age gaps, and the ethics of turning private lives into lyrical material while keeping the real story hidden. In a world where nothing stays private for long, even secrecy becomes part of the spectacle. But underneath all the debate, there's something strangely human about it, the need to experience something real while living under constant visibility, trying to protect something personal in a space that never stops watching. That obsession with private lives and public perception creates the perfect bridge into the next dynamic, because here the formula flips completely. If Drake represents secrecy, this next pair represents exposure at maximum volume. Travis Scott and Kylie Jenner exist on the opposite end of the spectrum, where nothing stays hidden even if they tried. From the moment they were first linked around Coachella 2017, everything moved fast, almost aggressively so, like the world was watching a relationship being built in real time without editing or delay. What started as a sudden connection quickly turned into a cultural spectacle. Two massive public figures merging their worlds, creating a storyline that was instantly bigger than either of them individually. Their relationship didn't just exist, it unfolded publicly, step by step. A child in 2018, another in 2022, every milestone instantly becoming global conversation. There was no private lane, no protected space, just constant visibility under extreme attention. And with that visibility came pressure, breakups in 2019, again in 2022, each time framed through reports of lifestyle differences, scheduling strain, and emotional distance under spotlight conditions most relationships would never survive. Rumors followed them everywhere, cheating speculation, trust questions, reconciliations, and separations, all amplified through social media like a live broadcast no one could turn off. Even during quieter periods, the connection never fully disappeared. It lingered in posts, comments, appearances, small gestures that kept people guessing whether the story was really over or just paused. At its core, what makes their situation so compelling isn't secrecy at all, it's the lack of it. Two massive worlds colliding in full view, one built on entertainment and empire, the other on brand, influence, and global attention. A relationship that never had the luxury of disappearing into privacy. And underneath all the glamour, it becomes something more familiar than it first appears. Two people trying to maintain connection while living inside systems that constantly demand more of them. Love existing under pressure, stretched across fame, time, and expectation until it becomes difficult to tell where the relationship ends and the spotlight begins. And from a romance the entire world watched unfold in real time, we land on something even stranger. A situation debated, dissected, and retold across millions of screens, except this time, there's a twist buried in plain sight. Because this next story isn't really a relationship at all. It's a reminder of how quickly perception can become narrative, and narrative can become truth online without ever needing proof. A perfect example of how the internet doesn't just report stories, it sometimes creates them out of fragments, moments, and assumptions stitched together. It all circles around Elon Musk and Nicki Minaj. Around late May 2026, Nicki Minaj made an appearance at SpaceX's Starbase during a Starship launch event, bringing her signature larger-than-life presence to the moment. She engaged with the experience in real time, sharing reactions, excitement, and lighthearted commentary about the event, even acknowledging Elon Musk and the team behind the project with genuine enthusiasm. What started as a public, celebratory moment quickly became another example of how fast the internet fills in gaps, building narratives far beyond what actually happened. Turning simple interactions into stories people debate long after the moment is gone. That was all. The full spark, the full flair. A calm, respectful, friendly form of celebrity networking. Billionaire and rap queen sharing shared air. Yet the internet grabbed it and pushed it somewhere bigger, somewhere absurd, somewhere it never should ever go. A few brief exchanges followed, and the speculation machine raised the volume beyond the dawn sky. Memes, jokes, wild conspiracy theories fun. A rumored romance between two of the most polarizing names under the sun. And here is the part can't miss. The reason this closes and doesn't lead it. No romance exists here. Nothing. Nil. No basis. Nicki Minaj been married to Kenneth Petty 2019. That is fact. There's not shred of credible reporting that Nicki Minaj and Elon Musk ever crossed that lane. Truly. The entire situation was pure internet nonsense at core. Blown up to the moon purely because both names draw attention massive. Fact is, the evidence that sparked the frenzy traces back to a post from what is openly a parody account, showing how the foundation of this supposed romance was built and what it amounts. If you enjoyed this video, click any card shown on your screen right now.